A monster popularized by folklore and used by parents to scare their children into good behavior, the Boogeyman has lurked under the beds and in the closets of many a child over the years. And this nefarious, ominous, devilish concept has been the focus of many a horror movie too over the decades, which is what we're here to explore today. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are the 10 scariest Boogeymen in horror movies. Number 10, Jason Voorhees, Friday the 13th. Discounting the original movie, Jason Voorhees has terrorized teens for an impressive 11 films so far, with the Friday the 13th TV series currently in the works, plus the forever tease of more movies. Be it Crystal Lake, Manhattan, Springwood, or even space, nobody is safe when Jason is on the rampage. This is someone who has some of the most memorable, iconic kills in the entire history of horror. If looking at the all-time greatest boogeymen of the genre, there's no way that Jason Voorhees can't get a mention. There's a reason why fans have spent the past 15 years clamoring for a new Friday the 13th film. Heck, there's a reason why Elphonic and Gun Media's 2017 Friday the 13th video game continues to be so popular to this very day. His name was Jason, indeed. Number 9, Sadako Ring. Whether it's Sadako or Samara, this boogie woman is a terrifying prospect whose targets have just 7 days to live once they've watched the cursed VHS tape. Appearing as a drowned girl in a white nightgown and with long black hair covering her face, Sadako is based on a Yurei, a vengeful spirit that haunts a certain space. While the Ring franchise has vastly varied in quality across its 14 films to date, yes 14, splitting Sadako into two twin beings, fusing her into a giant monster that's combined with Ju-on's Kayako, and eventually turning that VHS curse into an online one, but throughout all of that, Sadako has constantly had a properly chilling character design. Plus, to add to the creep factor, the various actresses to play Sadako are often filmed walking backwards, with the footage eerily reversed for the final product. Number 8, The Man, Carnival of Souls. Released to commercial obscurity in 1962, Carnival of Souls is the sole directing credit for Herc Harvey, who coincidentally also stars as the film's villain, simply referred to as The Man. Thankfully, Carnival of Souls is these days viewed as quite the cult classic, with filmmakers such as David Lynch citing it as an influence on his work, and it's clear to see why, with the film's dreamlike, slow-burn horror relying on a steadily creeping sense of unease, thanks largely to the slew of bizarre characters encountered by our heroine, Mary. As for the man, he's a gaslighting fiend who haunts Mary after she becomes intrigued by an abandoned carnival on the outskirts of the town she's just moved to. Dressed in a simple black suit, a la an Undertaker, no, not the WWE Hall of Fame one, the man's amateur makeup only adds to his menace, with Herc Harvey using an eerie smile to perfectly capture the man's sinister intentions. Number 7, Candyman. Candyman. Based on Clive Barker's The Forbidden, the Candyman franchise, particularly the first 3 movies, revolves around a hook-handed killer revealed in Farewell to the Flesh to be Daniel Robert Hale, who appears to anyone who dares say his Candyman name 5 times into a mirror. For those bold enough to try out this particular trick, it's very much a clinical case of curiosity killed the cat. From director Bernard Rose, the first Candyman movie is a genuine all-timer, bringing a haunting gothic charm and almost film noir quality to the horrors on show and showcasing themes of race and class. Sure, the next 2 films may have veered a little more into generic slasher territory, but Candyman still remains an ominous figure, bringing plenty of body horror and some bloody brutal kills to the table. Number 6, Freddy Krueger and Nightmare on Elm Street. A child killer who loves to crack wise and slaughter his victims in extremely creative ways, Freddy Krueger certainly has a flair for the dramatic. Maybe at times a little too dramatic and wink-winking, of course. Still, regardless of how much of a parody of itself the Elm Street franchise became, there's no disputing how prolific and outright sadistic Freddy remained through the initial 7 films, his crossover with Jason Voorhees, and the awful 2010 remake. Well, it was technically a demonic entity at the heart of Wes Craven's New Nightmare, but you get the idea. Never sleep again is quite the apt phrase when it comes to the Elm Street series, and Freddy is a sort of villain who'll have you reaching for the caffeine. Number 5, Black Phillip, the Witch. A boogie goat, you say? Well, yes and no, kind of. When young twins Mercy and Jonas mention that they've spoken to their family's goat, Black Phillip, and even sing songs about him, it all appears fairly innocent. After all, who hasn't sung to a goat, right? Of course, a rewatch of The Witch makes these moments all the more sinister, for we'd later learn that Black Phillip is literally the devil and has been behind the family's misfortunes, tying in with the belief that for witches to gain their powers, they must sign a contract with the devil, as in Phillip, clearly the most evil goat in the history of cinema. Number 4, The Entity, It Follows. Sexually transmitted diseases are clearly no fun, but making STDs even less fun is when they come joined by a spooky curse. And that's the very, very loose premise of David Robert Mitchell's It Follows. An homage to classic 80s pictures, It Follows centers on an unrelenting presence that is passed on by having sex. Basically, if this curse is troubling you, you need to have sex with someone in order to rid yourself of this evil, and instead have it target that other person. Should that person die, the curse reverts back to its previous victim, with this sinister presence taking the form of friends and family and constantly tracking you down to your location. In terms of dogged determination, they don't get much more determined than the shape-shifting spirits at the core of It Follows. Number 3. The Babadook. The Babadook. The Babadook is intensely harrowing and one of the smartest horror films of the past 10 years. Yes, somehow it's been 10 years since that film was released, making us all feel very, very old. After her husband died in a car crash, Amelia is a widow struggling to raise their son, Sam, with that a theme that gets more pronounced as the film progresses. You see, Sam becomes obsessed with a character from one of his books. That'd be the Babadook, or technically Mr. Babadook to you. Positioned as somewhat of an imaginary friend to this kiddo, things start to get strange shortly after when the Babadook begins making nightly visits to the house. Resembling a tall, pale man dressed in a black coat and top hat, making the Babadook even creepier is his nasty habit of scuttling across the ceiling. And once the core theme of the movie becomes fully clear, the film pulls the neat trick of being scarier without the monster. Number 2. Pennywise. It. Seriously, when was the last time you saw a clown outside of a horror setting? These Harley Quinns have basically transitioned from the role of family entertainers to outright murderous beasts, and few are as memorably murderous as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Adapted from one of Stephen King's most beloved novels, Pennywise resurfaces every 20 years to torment the town of Derry, Maine, which, given how the majority of King's most disturbed tales take place in Derry, you deserve everything you get if you don't move out of Derry as soon as you possibly can. While Pennywise often uses his clown form to torment the children of Derry, he can also shapeshift into pretty much whatever his victims fear the most, meaning this otherworldly evil gets mighty creative with his attacks. Whether played by Tim Curry or Bill Skarsgård, Pennywise constantly makes for a truly sinister yet charmingly enigmatic figure. Number 1. Michael Myers, Halloween. He may technically be a mere man of flesh and blood, but there are several points in the franchise, particularly in the original Halloween, where Michael Myers is literally referred to as the Boogeyman. Even some of young Tommy Doyle's classmates torment him with chants of Boogeyman, Boogeyman to try and scare the poor kid. As for classic Boogeyman tropes, Michael literally pops up at the side of Jamie Lloyd's bed in Halloween 4, ominously lurks in mirrors at various points across the franchise, and several of his kills across the series have involved him loitering in closets, all of which makes for pretty pitch-perfect Boogeyman behaviour. Plus, you know, like any good Boogeyman, you can't keep Michael Myers down, with him returning time and time again, regardless of what's been thrown at him at the close of any particular movie.